Welcome back to a bevy of bloods for round 22 of the 2023 season. It's another win, so of course another episode where Stevo joins me to dissect the super soaring win over the Suns. So fluff up your tail feathers and settle in for a potentially biased yarn about all things to do with our beloved bloods.
SCG Swans.
G'day there, Cygnus and Swanlings. My name is Chris and I'm joined by the Swifty Soarer himself. No, not Taylor Swift. I can understand why you would get confused. It is Stevo. Stevo, welcome back to the potty, mate.
Thanks, mate. I think that's the first time I've ever heard my name in the same sentence as Taylor Swift, so I'll take it. I know my sister-in-law in particular is a massive fan, so she'd be stoked to hear us referred to together.
Well, start signing some autographs, mate, and send them over because you're in for some coin. Anyway, let's get stuck into the game. But just before we do, thank you everyone who has joined up so far and followed us and liked our stuff. We appreciate it. We see it. It does make a big difference to the channel. Thank you for supporting your bevy. Now, to the score recap. Last Saturday, our Sydney Swans defeated the Gold Coast Suns by 24 points with a final score of 18-6, 114 to 13-12-90. Well, Stevo, do you want to take it away with first impressions?
Yeah, I thought it was a pretty strong win, actually. It was tight to start with, but then, they got through the first 4 goals, and they got the last 2. So the bracket in between that, we kicked 17 goals to 8. So that was pretty solid. And after early in the second quarter, when McLean got that goal, we weren't headed, and I think, we're in control of the game. And so here we are, 5 weeks ago. We thought we'd need to win probably 6 or 7 out of 7 to make the finals. We won 5 out of 5. There's 2 more to go. A couple of results have gone the way we needed them to last week. So like Geelong, Giants and Dogs all lost last week. That helped us out, got us in the 8. We win the next 2 we're in, but the next 2, which is Adelaide away and then Melbourne, are probably the toughest in that whole run of 7, I reckon. So we've got our work cut out to stay in the 8.
Yeah, it has been a mad ending to the season for many fans and many clubs. And to be honest, it just feels like the Swans are at the top of some of that. So as Swans fans, we have had a bit of a rock and roll season. We were just talking about it just before we started recording of how long this season feels like it's gone on. We'll get into Paddy McCartan at the end of the episode, of course, with his retirement, the Tommy McCartan thing, Rampy being injured, whole backline being decimated, for instance, and Will Gould coming in. Do you remember that? There's so many things that have happened for this season. It feels like it's been 3 seasons worth, but to see us in the pointy end of the season in the right part of the ladder is pretty good. And yeah, I'll take nothing away from the lads. They have been working really hard, and we've seen a lot from them. Mate, do you want to get stuck into the game then, to the good, the bad, and the stats? What have you got for the crew?
There were 2 stats that I was happy with this week that we talked about last week not being happy with. One was this week we only conceded 54 inside 50s, which is way more manageable. The previous 2 weeks it had been 68 and 69 against Essendon and the Giants. So 54 inside 50s is far less for the backline to have to deal with, which was good. And then we won the clearances and the contested ball, +4 on both, and that's an area where the Swans haven't really been that strong. And the Gold Coast are a strong contested team, so to effectively break even +4 isn't much of a win, but to break even with a solid inside midfield group, I thought was a really good tick going into the next couple of games, because we've got some tougher ones to come for sure.
Yeah, mate, that's a really good stat. The +4 clearances, like you said, +4 contested ball. So that's effectively going to be a draw, but against that team with some of the big kids that we suspected they would throw at us. So like in particular Rowe, it ended up being really sweet for us. Like we ended up working it through, and although it did take a fair bit of punishment by some of the lads, they gave it back. One of the ones I'm interested in talking through with you actually is the hit-outs. So I know we've not been strong in the hit-outs because our rucks have been decimated over the year, and we have found a way to win without them, and so we're effectively running off just Hickey and what he provides around the ground and competes with the big boys. But we were once again just crushed in hit-outs, and we were minus 25 in hit-outs, but we're +4 in clearances. I can't explain the correlation between those two. Help me out. is there something that I'm missing here, or are those two really should be in alignment with each other? If you're going to lose the hitouts by that amount anyway, you should be expecting not to have won the clearances. That's the way I look at it.
I think hitouts are a pretty overhyped stat a lot of the time. Just because you win the hitouts doesn't mean you're going to win the clearances. What's really important is what happens once the ball comes down, and quite a few prominent commentators, especially former coaches and even current coaches, have said this over the past several years when they've been asked this. That we don't really worry so much about winning the hitouts if we're then fighting for the footy on the ground. And I think, like, just from a playing point of view, I think it's easier in my mind to set up to try and win the clearance if you're losing the hitouts, because you can at least set up defensively. You can just work off their ruckman rather than when you've just got someone who's crashing in and might win at one time, might win at the other time. It's much harder. Of course, you prefer to be winning it. It's much easier if you can dominate hitouts and on the ground, but you can certainly win clearances without winning hitouts. I don't think it's a problem.
Yeah, but I'm with you. I'm with you all the way there, actually. But by that much, I guess where I'm a little bit confused is that just the number of them. So 25 hitouts, and to win effectively four of them. So it just seems like an astronomical number. I find it really difficult to get my head around it. And I guess it's just, as you mentioned, it's the way you're setting up is if you're preparing for that. Are they preparing for losing the hit out? And that sounds like what's going on. So all this want and need for like superb ruckmen that can just dominate, unless you've got a dominating ruckman, it seems like the whole game is really caught on to a ruckman really worth it, which is hilarious because I think it was last week or maybe the week before that it was technically Ruck Week, where we were celebrating ruckman for a week, and that lasted for about 15 seconds of promos. I don't know, didn't do a whole lot for anything else anyway. They stopped mentioning after like the couple of Fox Sports promos, and it just seems to be a bit of a dying thing. And maybe the Gawn/Grundy situation at Melbourne is putting it to a quick death. I don't know. I'm kind of just working it out myself. Do you see anything in this, or is it just a bit of a nuance with what we're seeing in our particular team, and it feels a bit more closer to home than it really is?
I think it shows the advantage or the value of having an absolutely dominant ruckman like Gawn or like Brodie Grundy. I mean, Melbourne have got two of probably only a handful of really elite rucks in the competition that can take a game on and be a match winner, and they're hoarding one and they're pretty much warehousing Grundy. And if you can get a really, yeah, and you're getting a really top one like you see what Gawn can do. He's one of the most damaging players in the competition. He's amazing, but there's not many ruckmen that can do that. If you can get one, then they're worth their weight in gold. But otherwise, you can set up against a player who's dominant, like we did against Gold Coast. We went with Hickey was not winning the hitouts, but you can set up to counter that. You can be reactive to their ruckman. You can play differently on their like ground level players. It's not something which is going to stop you winning a game of footy, as we see week in, week out.
That's interesting. Look, from one old school mentality from ruckman to another old school mentality, which is tagging players, which we have seen, of course, with varying degrees of effectiveness. And in this particular week, as we kind of predicted last week, we suggested that Touk Miller might go over to Errol, and that's exactly what happened. But it didn't really stop him, did it? Like some of the stats that we're showing here, he was. Although he didn't quite have his, plus 600 meters gain and his 37 freaking touches, with 35 of them being kicks and just outrageous numbers that we've seen some weeks that have walked him into 3 points without a question, he was still really good. So with 8 tackles, best on ground, equal best on ground, 19 disposals with 12 of them being kicks, which is not a bad showing at all, 348 meters gain, which is again just effectively being a mortal. And Touk, in the meantime, had 22 touches, only the 2 tackles, and about the equal meters gain with 358. So, do you see and do you think that a tag on Errol was successful or not in your eyes in this case?
I was really surprised that they dropped the tag in the second half. That was a bit that I couldn't figure out. I thought that in the first half it had been quite effective, really. Other players had stepped into the Errol Goulden void for sure, but then at half time they're up by a couple of points, up I think 2 points, and and Mueller had done well. I think he'd had about 10 touches. He kicked a goal, and Goulden had not had he hadn't been invisible, as you said. He still did pretty well, but he hadn't had anywhere near his match-winning, game-breaking impact that he normally has. And then they changed the matchup, so it's hard for me to understand why they would do that. Really, I'm sure they had their reasons, but it's a bit odd given how well Miller had done against Lockie Neal in that matchup. So I don't know.
Yeah, well, I think they asked Horse about it as well. They were just suggesting, like, is this something that he was okay with? And Horse, referring to Errol, and Horse was just like, well, he's just going to have to work it out, won't he? With a bit of a smirk on his face, which is, I kind of felt that there was a smirk on his face for, like, that's how good of a player you are when they're sending a Brownlow potential quality midfielder over to your young player at 22 years old to try to tag them. That's saying a lot, right? So I guess you just take it in positivity, and if Errol can work through it by working his defense anyway, still making an impact on the ground, it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, absolutely. And he's going to get tagged for his rest of his career. He's probably going to play 10 or 12 more seasons of AFL, and he's going to get tagged a lot. So, that's going to be his life as a footy player.
That's it. His first tag of his life. Just get a Took Miller jersey, sign up on the wall, and just remember that he owned him that one day. Mate, let's move on to favourite moments and missed chances, mate. I'll give it over to you to give us what your best was.
There were two goals that I loved in the last quarter, and they were the ones that really put the game past the Gold Coast. They had a few chances in that last quarter to come back at us, and they missed a couple of shots they really should have got that could have tightened the game up a little bit and maybe mount a late charge. But then Matt Roberts kicked his first AFL goal, which was a great snap off his right foot, and he's a left footer, so that was really nice to see him get his first ever AFL goal. And then Harry Cunningham drifted up from the back line where he's been for most of the season and kicked only his third goal for the season. And funnily enough, his other two goals were both against Gold Coast in round one, so he's got a bit of a thing for the Gold Coast Suns. He loves it. So he put a nice little bookend on his season with his third goal. And it's always nice to see a defender get a goal. He'll be telling everyone at the club for the next week or 10, I reckon, about how he kicked the goal.
I think that takes him up to 51 goals for his career, which is actually not a bad amount considering he's playing like pretty much defense his whole time, right? So that's not terrible. He does manage to get himself up there and have a crack at it. Yeah, those are some nice ones, mate. Look, my favourite part of the game, I think, was just watching Blakey's first quarter. I thought he was unbelievable. I don't know what it looked like on the telly, but it definitely, watching it live, he was sprinting left, right, and centre. He was coming off his man. He was double tagging people. He was like just dominating his guy. He was just faster off the line, and he was just taking intercept marks. I think he took 5 intercepts. 6 disposals, 5 kicks, and 3 marks in the one quarter. Really busy period.
Wow,
that's in a quarter.
His first quarter. That's huge. Yeah.
The guy was unbelievable. So as soon as I saw that, and he had one clanger, to be fair, that he would have loved to have back. One of those moments where he just kind of little deft kick that didn't quite go all the way. But nonetheless, I was like, at that point, I was just like, geez, he's going to get 3 points here. He's unbelievable. And the offense eventually picked up. But yeah, when we're under the pump, Blakey was on fire. So that was my favourite for sure. What about you, mate? What else did you have on your side?
Oh, honestly, my other favourite moment of Saturday had nothing to do with the Swans or footy. It was the Matildas penalty shootout win. That was insane.
Oh my God, it was so good.
Shots. 21 if you count the one that they forced them to retake, and then she went the same way and she saved it again. It was unbelievable. I was sitting in a park in Helsinki waiting for our footy game to start, and I was watching it on my phone, losing my mind. I think the locals must have thought there was something wrong with me, but that was great. That was my Saturday highlight, really, honestly. It has nothing to do with the Swans, but it was great.
Mate, I think it was the nation's favourite moment. If we get into that just a little bit, my grandmothers, I thought they were going to die from the excitement of watching that. So my family is Chilean. Soccer is life, and that's all. It's the only sport that it exists to them. And so we're all around the telly at my grandparents' place. Just losing every single save, every goal, jumping up and down, screaming, and then in the final goal, the Vine kicked. Oh my goodness, we went off. So, yeah, mate, it was special. And let's get into it a little bit. In terms of TV ratings, it outrated, I think, absolutely everything except for Leighton Hewitt's loss in one of the Grand Slams from memory. It outranked all of the AFLs, all of the NRLs, including the State of Origins, Ash Barty's Wimbledon. It just dominated. And do we just put to bed that no one wants to watch women's sport anymore? Can we just stop talking about that and just realize that it doesn't matter? It's just the game that we're watching.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there's something about the Matildas which unites the country in a way that a lot of our other main codes don't, because like Aussie rules is mostly in the southern and western states, and then you've got the two rugby codes in the north. Cricket doesn't have quite the same pull to like the masses in the same way that football does, like the Matildas style football does. The Socceroos are good, but they're not great. But the Matildas are genuinely world class, and Australia loves a winner on top of that. So it's something which really I think brings in a huge amount of people, and the fact that it's a women's team I think is amazing too. Because like my mum, for example, she's always been living in a household with me and my brother and my dad who are really into sport, and she sort of keeps a casual eye on it, but she's actually texting the family group chat saying what a win, watching the games, which is something that I've never seen my mum doing for any sport before.
No, I entirely hear you, and that's what I just mentioned about my grandmothers. Both of them glued to the TV. If this was a normal World Cup, they'd be interested. I think, of course, they would be. It's soccer is life, football is life, but in particular, I think this one really had an extra edge to it for them. So yeah, special moment. Australia will never forget. I'll never forget that. That was unbelievable, and we've got ourselves a semi-final tomorrow. We should start talking about the Swans, but my God, Matilda's just captured the whole heart of an entire nation, holding it dearly. And if we want to swing it back into the AFL, they did go hang out with the Swannies at the Swan HQ for a training session or something. Yeah, so
yeah, they did their recovery in there, I think, or something. Yeah.
Yeah, so see, we've shoehorned some AFL into it. There you go.
Got a few photos and stuff. There was a nice picture of a bunch of the Swans players and Matildas players together. It was good, and it's good to see this cross codes. I hate this code rivalry. Frankly, I think it's nonsense, and you can love as many sports as you want. But it was really good to see that partnership and cooperation, even if it was just a short term thing.
Yeah, I think the whole code rivalry is so funny, especially coming from Sydney, and the two of us coming from New South Wales, and both loving AFL over the other codes. It's and we get to see it firsthand. Of course, we're in the firing lines, but yeah, there's not a single person in the world in Australia in AFL that I'd imagine it wouldn't question that there's any reason for rivalry here. It's one nation, and it's probably the most exciting thing. And what I love about the what is it with women's football that is just seems like they don't flop as much, they don't complain as much, there's not as much whinging in it, they just get on with it. So maybe that's just something to be said about the game, that if you want to watch Australians, if Australians want to really get behind a football, and I refer to soccer, as AFL and NRL fans, maybe he just needs to kind of stop with the malarkey. I don't know. That's a technical term, but that's just the thought I had, mate. So I don't know.
Malarkey.
Malarkey. Well, mate, look, let's we've spent a bit of time on the favourite moments, and for good reasons, because the Matildas are through to the semis. Let's move on, mate. Let's get stuck into the Bob Medal, which is equivalent of the Bob Skilton Medal. We give 3, 2, 1 points out to the best Swans players, and this week they win a delicious home-cooked Vietnamese meal from my soon-to-be mother-in-law, a condom bison, which is like a pork, like a nice pork fried thing with some broken rice, some like pork skin, and some cucumber on the side. It's damn delicious. I recommend it. So, 3, 2, 1 points. 3 points to Warner, 2 points to Haywood, and 1 point to Blakey. So, mate, take it away with Warner, who wins the Condumbison.
Yeah, he had a good game. I mean, 28 touches, 510 metres gained, 7 clearances, which is solid, 2 goals. He was really good on the pressure, 25 on the pressure. He kicked a couple of really great goals. I think both off his left, no, one off his left, one off his right, and he had a really powerful impact around breaking through those packs and stoppages and stuff. So, yeah, he had one of his better games for a while.
Yeah, has it been? It's not necessarily been quiet, but it's definitely warming up, right? That's the way I'm looking at it. And this is kind of like him ramping up at the right time, and him at the presser afterwards was suggesting that his body's feeling really good. Maybe there was something there that we didn't know of, but yeah, look, it's grand. Like a firing off Warner, especially on a day where Errol is a bit not off, but obviously being tagged and is being held up. Someone like him, an offensively minded Warner, was perfect to have and popped up at the right time. It's grand. Do we want? This is what we want, right? This is the kind of player that Warner is. Can he sustain this? Is this the kind of guy that can sustain this quality of game for as long as he has, and he can? Is this the future of our mids to have an offensively minded Warner running around for the next 10 years?
Yeah, I like Warner when he's running hard forward. That's when he really can cut teams up, and if he can do that more consistently over the next 2 or 3 years, I think that it means that the other pieces of the midfield can be almost built around figuring out how to get him exploding out like the way he does.
Yeah, love it, love it. He's an excited damn player, and the haircut doesn't hurt either. The old pineapple. All right, mate. Let's move on to 2 points for Hayward, who had an absolute screamer. Do you want to take it away with Hayward?
He was amazing. He's a half forward. He's kicking 4 goals, getting 16 touches, making I think 3 tackles in the forward part of the ground, 5 tackles in total. He did everything you could possibly want a half forward to do, and I kind of like it when players like him get the reward on the scoreboard because he does what he did, like what he did on the weekend. He does every week. He does all the hard work. He doesn't necessarily get the goals because it's the type of role where you're not always the main target. But this week he did, and good on him. He really made the most of his opportunities, and he kicked I think 4 straight, didn't he? Didn't miss any at all. So really, really good reward for him. He's been on the end of a bit of stick from some fans over the last little while for missing some shots that he really should have kicked, and fair enough, he should have kicked them. And 4 great goals on the back of a really good game around the ground as well. So yeah, really happy with how Hayward went. And he's a bit of a smoky too because he gets under the guard. You think about guarding all these big forwards the Swans have got. You guard Heaney, you guard Papley, and then Hayward just pops up and kicks 4.
That's it. Yeah, you don't guard him at your own peril. Yeah, look, 5 tackles, 16 disposals, with 11 of them being contested. That's superb. Like that's hard stuff by him. And if you just watch the game back, and just all of his little spots that he was in, he was getting up the ground, right up in the wing. Getting the ball to the ground, no spoiling. He was doing plenty of work. He's a hard worker, and that kind of player, he's okay. Like yeah, the numbers are going to work themselves out, right? His averages are going to sort themselves out in time, and so him just working hard and doing things off the ball, eventually his kicking has kind of come true, and he's just playing with confidence, which is amazing, and again popping up at the right time. And 3 forward tackles, second on ground, which I know forward tackles, inside forward tackles. Inside 50 tackles, I'll say that last time, is your favourite stat. So, yeah, getting a couple of those, man, can't go wrong with old Hayward. Popping up at the right time. All right, mate. Blakey with 1 point. My Blakey, mate. Do you want to take it away with old Blakey?
Oh, you can. You're his biggest supporter. You can do it.
Oh, yeah. I'm a bit of a fanboy right now, especially for this week. Yeah, look, 24 disposals, 92% efficiency, 8 marks, best on ground, equal best on ground. And this is the one I really liked. His 12 intercept possessions. So 24 possessions and 12 of them were intercepts. So half of his possessions were turning it over from the other side. That is hard work. That is reading the game. That is getting yourself in position. That is working super hard on your man, getting off them, supporting, getting everything done to get the ball propelling forward. He didn't have as many of his dashing runs, but it seemed like even though they were onto his dashing runs, he could still hurt them by dashing before the run, getting into place and getting it done. I was super, super happy. And as I said, in the first quarter, I felt he was clearly best on ground. I thought it was absolutely stunning. Mate, honourable mentions. Do you want to take it away with a few on your side?
I'm going to start with Heaney. I thought, especially in the first half, he was really, really good. He because our talls weren't really doing much. It was him and Hayward really in the first half that were really strong. The sort of half forward, like running inside 50 type players that work really hard up the ground and then really get on their bike and use their smart running and their speed and their stamina to burn off their opponents. I thought Heaney was really, really good as a link player also in that first half. Kicked 2 goals. And this stat came up. I was watching on the couch with Ben Dixon and John O'Brien and Nathan Buckley, the panel show yesterday, I guess. And he's actually ranked, Isaac Heaney, since round 10, he's been ranked the second general forward, which I guess is every forward that's not a tall forward, second in the general forward since round 10 in the AFL. So he's really started to build a strong back half of the season, almost without getting noticed too much, I think.
Yeah, and he was a bit of a whipping boy, as he wasn't he, for the first, or maybe not the first couple games, but definitely in the middle there, where everyone's just like his form is down and needs to do something. We're talking about throw him in the middle, throw him out the forward, putting him in between, spend time with both of them. Yeah, he's kind of forced his way back into the game. It's unbelievable. So, another player that just seems to be finding form at the right time, right? That's kind of what we're all about. I'm going to take in my honourable mentions my Ginger Prince Francis and
Ginger
Tommy, my Ginger Prince and Tommy McCartan, and so let me just bring these stats to you, and it goes. So this is Francis and McCartan collectively. So if they between them had 5 1-on-1s, they've lost one each. They both had 8 1%ers. That's equal third. They both had 7 spoils each. They both had 11 disposals each. Tommy had 2 more marks for the game and 7 marks all up. But Francis had 3 more tackles to Tommy's 0. Between these two fellas, that's a lovely, lovely day on the park. And I'm not saying that there is a duo here, but what I am saying is that we were looking at having a R&B 90s R&B name for the duo, and a couple of things were running around. T-Mac and the Ginge Prince. I think there was the Tommy, was it Tommy Mac and the Prince of something? Anyway, we're working with the names, but there seems to be some kind of gel here, which is grand because we know what's happened to Paddy, and we're always looking for a position there, and it's either been at the moment Rampy or Melican or Francis, and having Francis out there for a few games has actually come through with some goods, and of course McCartan playing really well as well. So, mate, that's my little call on my two there. Do you want to pick up another one?
Yeah, I'll give you one more. I liked Leo McDonald's game. He didn't get a huge amount of kicks or marks or anything, but he kicked 3 goals from the opportunities he had, and he had a lot of presence and impact around the ground. So even if he wasn't the one clunking the mark, he was there in the contest, providing a good option, and I think he's growing very unspokenly. What's it like softly spokenly? He's really growing to become a decent key forward just in the last season or less. So yeah, McDonald for me was another one that I liked.
Yeah, 3-0 and not get a point in the points there. That's a bit rough, but yeah, good on. Yeah, McDonald's is grand. I'm going to pick up Wixie. Rampant pressure. 5 tackles equal best. 8 tackles best on ground. 4 tackles inside 50. That's best on ground. 1 clearance, but unfortunately only 2 behinds. But 11 disposals and 3 marks. So a pretty busy day for old Wixie. Really happy to see he's been getting himself injected into the game more and more and more. And there's no question about his validity in the team ever since he's come back in. He's been a lock, and it's good to see from our local Sydney boy. Mate, do you have any more?
I'll give one more. I think Papley was good. I really liked his impact around the centre bounces in particular, because the Swans do often lack that real breaking. Like Warner is a very dynamic player out of the centre square, but then Papley I think adds another element to that. And so when he's in at the centre bounce, I think the team looks good when he's in there, and also stoppages around the ground. So Papley was solid as well.
Perfect. Yep, don't disagree. I think he had 11 scoring involvements, which is best on ground as well. So it's pretty tidy from the little Paps. My last one, and it's more just a watch, Rowbottom watch. We all know that Rowbottom is creeping his way up to the pivotal 170 tackles, which was the best of Swans in a season. That number is held by both Parker and Brett Kirk. With his 8 tackles on the weekend, it brings him to 10 tackles to get to equal Brady, Kirk, and Parker. And a little interesting stat from Twitter from Sunder Landry. Rowie is the 5th Swan in 2023, and the first mid to register 0 turnovers and 0 clangers for the game. Considering all of his haters and detractors have been about his turnovers and clangers, him being the first mid to do so in a game is pretty special, as well as everything he did. And he's also he's absolute bashing of Rao in a tackle in the third quarter. I think 10 minutes to go or so. The kid is dynamo. So good to see him getting some attention out there by the stat gurus as well. Mate, well, that brings us to the end of the game in itself. A pretty fascinating one. It's so important for the whole season. But let's get into the post-game standing and ladder implications. We are now placed 7th inside the 8th at 46 points, with unfortunately 3 teams underneath us with only 2 points off, and those being the Dogs, the Bombers, and the Giants. Mate, what does that mean to our season, Stevo? How do we get through the next couple game, and who are we playing?
It's simple. Now, last week we talked about this, and that we said that we would know that this week, hopefully, depending on other results, we would know exactly what it would mean for the Swans to then need to make the finals. Enough results went our way that worked out. The Giants lost, the Cats lost, and who else lost? Someone else. The Dogs also lost, and then the Crows lost as well, which made them drop off the back of us. We got 4 points further ahead of all of those 4 teams. So now it's simple. We need to win the last 2 games to be certain to be in. There's a possibility that 1 win is enough, but it's a possibility, and it comes down to then relying on various other results to go our way, and there's so many different combinations. It's ridiculous. All of the teams who are in the contention to get those final spots in the 8, if we assume that Carlton's going to get in, because they've got more points than anyone else, they've got strong percentage, and they play Gold Coast and then the Giants, we'd expect that Carlton is going to make it through the finals. That leaves St Kilda, Sydney, Bulldogs, Essendon, Giants, Cats, Crows, all within 4 points of each other. Sorry, 8 points of each other. Crows are on 10 wins, and Saints are 6th on 12. All of those teams mostly play each other for the next 2 weeks. Like, the only games that don't feature those teams playing each other is when the Dogs play West Coast, Adelaide play West Coast, and then Saints play Brisbane. We play Melbourne last game, and Essendon play Collingwood. All top 4 teams. All the other games with those teams are against each other. So it's a huge next 2 weeks, and there is no way to sit there and say, if this happens and this happens, we really just have to win. That's the easiest way to be sure of it, and not have to go into a situation where we're counting percentages and calculating odds coming into the last round game against the Demons. We just need to win.
Yeah, that's it. Like, I think we don't need a wild card round. Let's just reiterate that. The last 6 weeks of a season should be a wild card round where you've got a number of teams fighting to get in, and this is exactly the situation that we're in currently. As you mentioned, Carlton's just come out of nowhere, just blowing through the competition, winning some fantastic games, just beating people up, and the D's and them just fighting through hard. And then you've got teams like ourselves, GWS, the Bombers, Adelaide, St Kilda, the Crows, everyone just fighting for these final 3 spots or so. And this is what it's all about. This is what footy's all about. I'm loving it. I'm absolutely loving it. So next week, we've got ourselves Adelaide away. And then for the final game of the season, the D's and home. 2 pretty difficult ones there. Now, I think you mentioned, was it Adelaide and the Bombers both play West Coast? Which
Adelaide and the Bulldogs both play West Coast.
That's right. Bombers already had, and they almost lost to them. Yes.
Yeah.
The Dogs.
Bombers have got Giants, and then Bombers have got Collingwood last round, so that's a tough finish. Giants away, and then Collingwood for the Bombers.
Right. Okay. So Bulldogs and the Crows effectively have a gimme, right? We're not I know that West Coast kind of came up against the Bombers, but the Bombers can't be trusted any given week. So to see them. So that game is effectively a gimme. So it's going to be a hard slog. And as you said, we just got to win games. You can't be dependent on other results. It'd be nice. It'd be nice if all the results went our way, but there's no guarantee that's ever going to happen. So, well, let's get stuck into it then with Adelaide. Sorry, mate, did you have another thing to say there?
Oh, yeah, I was just going to say, listen to these are 3 massive games in this coming round that all involve those teams that are fighting for the 3 spots. St Kilda versus Geelong, Sydney versus Adelaide, Essendon versus Giants. So we'll know a lot more after that. Certainly one of Essendon and the Giants is gone. The loser of that is out. The others may live to fight another day, but again, it depends on results. And then the last round is hectic. You've got St Kilda away to Brisbane, Swans are playing Melbourne, and Essendon playing Collingwood. So all against big top 4 games. And then you got Carlton playing the Giants. You got the Dogs playing Geelong, and then you got Carlton playing where is it? And then you got Adelaide getting that easy one against the West Coast. So there's a lot happening in 2 weeks. I can't get my head around it. There's too much. I think we need to. Every week has been an elimination final, and it's just another one.
I did a podcast with Donny's Disposals, who's a great American YouTuber slash podcaster, does a great little thing. So Donny's Disposals, go out and listen. And we actually broke it down. We're just like, look, this is just wild, like the last few games. And when I'm on that show, I'm trying my best to look at it from like a perspective of someone who just is an AFL fan. And it's very hard for me to think like that, considering we do this Swans heavy podcast every single week, and that's where I'm geared to be. But yeah, looking at it, like you said, the games, like it's going to be nuts. Like the next 2 weeks of football are going to be brilliant. Like I'm just going to sit myself down in front of a TV and do nothing else. It's going to be grand. Like every single game, these next 2 games are effectively finals for the teams, and last week was the same. So yeah, finals football extends to 6 weeks at the very least. That's amazing. I'll take that any day. All right, so speaking of the first Sydney final, Adelaide. We're off to face Adelaide, prime time at Adelaide Oval. The last time I was there, I had beer thrown at me when we won the game. It was delicious. I enjoyed it. Take that, Crows. So look, they coming off a narrow loss over over the Lions in the Gabba. They fought themselves back. They got off to a quick start. Where have you heard that? That's basically something that the Swans kind of give away often enough. Before the Lions slowly crept it back about half time, and then became a bit of a shootout. At the end of first quarter, they kind of brought it back, and it became a shootout for 2 quarters. They took off with it. The Lions took off with the game, and then the Crows slowly clawed it back. We just ran out of time to lose the game. They put up a fight, mate, and you were suggesting there that their last few games have been pretty tidy as well.
Yeah, if you just look at it as 2 wins and 2 losses, it doesn't look as good. But if you read it like this, they lost to Melbourne by 4 points. They smashed Port by 47. They had a comfortable win over Gold Coast by 28. It's about what we beat them by, give or take. And then lost to Brisbane by 6 points. So actually in the last 4 weeks, they've played 3 of the top 4 and come away with a huge win and two one-kick games. So that's pretty good form, I think. I think that the Crows are a very good team, and they're far better than a 12th place team, which is what they are now.
So that's 3 of the top 4, played them, got close to 2 of them, smashed one of them, and Gold Coast, who, as we know, aren't terrible in the later parts of the season. That seems to be typical of them. They're good at the end of the seasons. It's not going to be easy, right? It's not going to be easy. We've got some personnel that we do have to come back, though. Braden has sat out his suspension, so he'll be back for selection this week, and you presume he goes straight onto that wing. Juzzy is still out. That's been confirmed by Horse. And Rampy and Amati are still question marks over both of them. And a little side note for Rampy as well. There is actually a really fantastic song out there by Ruth Robinson that I'll actually play at the end of this episode. So stick around for that. It's a great little homage to our captain and our goal climber, Rampy. So stick around for that one. But mate, with the potential for Amati and Rampy to come in, both of them coming off, soft tissue injuries, calf and hammy for the most part, tightness or soreness. There's always questions about Amati. Do you see any changes to the side as we have now?
I think the easy one, if we start with the easy one, is Braden Campbell would come in for either Matt Roberts or Dylan Stevens. You would imagine he would come in for one of them. Rampy, I mean, let's see if he's fit first, I suppose. But then the other one, if Amati doesn't play, I think that's the big one that I'd be wanting to have sorted out because I mean, ideally, because the forward line's been working well
Yeah, okay.
in the
So
last little while.
just
It's
the
been working
matchups make
really
a bit of
well.
sense.
Yeah, it's just messy because you're gonna bring in Rampy. That's fine. You can find a place for Rampy in the team, but it's more if Amadi comes out, what do you do? Because that forward structure with him and like of the tools, I mean of him and McDonald and McLean, and then McLean also helping in the ruck with Hickey has worked really really effectively. So then, do you bring in a like for like? Like ideally, you wouldn't want to change your structure, would you? You want to bring in a like for like player. Who is that? Like, who is the tall that you bring in? Do you bring in like Buller, who's played one game and he's been doing pretty well in the VFL, I guess? But do you bring him in for a massive game in Adelaide on that field against a very strong team, or do you mess with your forward line structure and play someone else in a different role? I don't know. It's really tough. I hope he's fit and they don't have to figure it out.
What about Laddams? Do you imagine sending Laddams back out to Adelaide to just absolutely cop it from the Adelaide Crows fans? Back in these old haunts and as a replacement of somewhat of a like for like for Amati in the terms that he's a tall player and can play a bit of forward.
I think you lose mobility with Adams because the thing about that I like so much about all three of those tall forwards that we have at the moment is like McDonald, Amadi, and McLean is they're all mega mobile players. They cover a lot of ground. I don't think Laddams does that. He's just not that type of player. It'd take some serious rethinking if he's out. So I reckon they'd be really, really hoping that he's okay.
Yeah, okay. Because it does seem, and this is the same problem we've had for most of the season, is depth. Depth is what we're effectively lacking. It doesn't matter. Tell me a part of the field and tell me how deep we are. It doesn't go very far. In the forwards, it's even more so. I mean, we had Buddy playing for most of the season when we didn't necessarily want to, from necessity. And so here we are again with the potential of missing someone like an Amati, and we are scratching our heads who's going to replace him as a like for like, or even as an experienced forward in that line. We don't have one. We do not have that player. It is a genuine problem. Now that all the players are fit, look at us go. We're starting to win games. We're starting to run a roll. We're starting to play a style of football that we can sustain. But if we do get the injuries, it starts to hurt. So knock on wood, we stick it out. All right, mate. So in terms of player changes, Braden comes in for, as you mentioned there, for either Dill or Matty Roberts. If you don't mind, I wouldn't mind having a quick chat about Dill Stevens. He was on our wing for the last half of the game in the O'Reilly stand, the O'Reilly rabble. And from what we saw, it still seems, although he was really good when the ball was around him, when he was impacting there, he actually had himself a pretty sweet game. But from what we saw with our eyes, he just was not getting into the game. We were standing there too far out of the wing, keeping a weird shape, which is just too far off anything. When they were basically contested and looking for an out, he wasn't trying to give an option out. His head was down. He just seemed to be shaken up. It just felt like he didn't want to be there. I don't know. From my eyes, it looked like that, and I'm sure he does, but I struggle to see it, mate. Like, what do you see on your side? Bring me out of this lull.
On the TV, it's really hard because you only see what's happening on the like the ball. You never see the way players are setting up. You don't see the structures or anything like that on the TV, unless occasionally they show one of these behind the goal shots, which they don't do that often. So on the TV, he looked like he was pretty alright actually, but in terms of his positioning, like you would assume that his position that he's holding on the field, because the winger's job is hard. Like you can kind of just be totally out of the game sometimes because you're supposed to hold a certain position, and so maybe that's where he's been instructed to be playing. I don't know, like maybe the Swans are wanting to. You said he was quite a way out from where the ball was. Maybe they want to really widen the field, like really make the Gold Coast play with a wide field. So that's his position that he's been told to play. And I have no idea. I'm just guessing why he might be a long way off the ball. But him in general, I've been thinking about him, and I think part of everyone's response to him, I think we talked about this before too, is that he was a number 5 draft pick, and that's I think why we look at him the way that we look at him. If he was picked in the 20s or the 30s, I reckon it could be quite different. And I sort of look back over the last 25 years, actually, of Swans' number one draft picks, just to get an idea of where Stevens maybe should sit and what we should expect out of him. And out of 25 draft picks over 25 years, there are about 4 or 5 years where we didn't take one, and a couple of years we took 2 or even 3. We've had 25 draft picks in 25 seasons. 10 of them I would consider to be a win, 9 a bust. 4 left early before we could really get the best out of them, and 2 it's too early to pick, which is Sheldrick and Constanti. So in terms of expectation of Stevens, it's maybe elevated to expect what we got out of our other top 5 draft picks, like your Jared McVeighs and your Isaac Heaney's, who would have been a top 2 pick, Mills, these sort of guys. Even Campbell, who's come ahead of Stevens. It's really hard to know where he fits and whether he'll be at the club next year, because he's a long way down on the depth chart as well. Like he's not in the best 22. He's out. He's in because McInerney's out. So yeah, it's hard to say. I'm not entirely confident that he's got a big future at the Swans, to be honest.
Yeah, which is I think it's a real shame, because I don't think that there's not a single person that I can see out there that is doubting his talent. Like, I know he's talented. I can see he's talented. He's around the ball. He's great. He's got plenty of skill. He can run all day. That's all grand. I mean, yeah, he's a bit light in the contest, but he's not the biggest body in the world, and that might get better as he starts bulking up. But it's just tricky, because he's kind of the kind of player. I think I've said this before, just in the chat. I don't think I've ever said it on the potty, but he's the kind of player that is going to make me so annoyed when he wins an AA somewhere else. And that's what I genuinely believe. I genuinely believe that he's an AA quality wingman elsewhere, and that's going to do my head in when it happens. But it's just, maybe it's just him. And I think you raised this as well in the chat, that it could be that he's just lacking in confidence, given that he's not been able to sit enough time in the team to work through some of the issues, say that someone like a Hay would have had that opportunity to. So that could also be something part of it.
Yeah, and he's playing a hard position. I mean, wing, it's really hard to impose yourself on the game as a winger, because you're really quite dependent on a lot of other elements. And so if you're sort of struggling on a wing as a younger player and not getting picked every week, and I know, like, it's hard. Like, I've played in footy teams, like, when I was younger, where you were sort of on the fringe, and every training session, every match in the back of the head is like, if I don't make the most out of every single time I touch the football, then what if I get dropped next week? And that's there. If you're one of those players like Errol Gouldens and stuff, who've come in as an 18-year-old and just been thrown straight in, and you're never going to get dropped. Like, I don't think Errol Goulden will play VFL in his life unless he wants to. And so for those players it's a bit easier, but for these ones who are on the fringe, it can be mentally really tough at all levels of football to be on the fringe. And maybe he just needs that confidence for a coach to say, you are going to play every single week. And at the Swans, he's not going to get that, because we know that on that midfield list, he's down there at the bottom, really. And besides the guys who've never played, he's pretty close to the bottom. And the chances of him getting that confidence for Longmire to say to him from season 2024, you're going to play every week, it's not going to happen. We know it's not going to happen. Maybe he needs that. I don't know. And I think that another club would probably take him, because he's worth the punt, and I think they get him for pretty much nothing, because his draft value is pretty low. Like, his trade value, I reckon he's worth probably a 3rd round pick at best. So a club will get him pretty much for free. And if they're willing to give him the opportunity, then good luck to him if he kicks on, because the Swans honestly have got a lot of players ahead of him.
Yeah, I think that's the kind of the problem with having some depth and some young players of quality there. And this isn't a journeyman. This is a kid who's just trying to make his way into AFL and get himself locked up in a nice contract, right, and make a career out of this. And yeah, I'm with you. I think if we're not using him, then it's just kind of be silly to hold on to him for the sake of it. So yeah, I mean, we're talking like he's already gone. Like, that's not necessarily the case.
Yeah, they might re-sign him. Who knows?
Yeah, they might re-sign him and consider a different role for him, or work out something to go with it, and figure out something, But send maybe Juzzy up a bit more forward, like he seems to play really well up there. So hold up a bit more space in the wing, and and Errol, God knows where he's going to end up playing. Right, he can play a bit of everything. So maybe there is a plan, and we don't know of it, but I think if I were to sum this up quickly, we all believe he's a good player. He's just not playing his best. We know he can do well, but it seems like he's a little bit on the fringe of the Swans, and there could be a bunch of reasons for his confidence being a bit down, I think. And yeah, we'll see where he ends up. Mate, all right, let's get stuck into the Crows. We've been buggering around a little bit. Danger players, talk to me. Who have the Crows got? Who are the ones we need to be looking out for?
I think there's the obvious ones for the Crows. There's a couple for them that I think could really do us some damage because, of course, you focus on the big guns every week. But McAdam has been in some really good form the last couple of weeks. He's kicked 3 and 4 goals in the last couple of weeks. He's starting to really give a threat alongside Tex Walker. And then the other one that I wanted to bring up is Malera off the back line. His ball use and his decisions off the back line. He's been a bit of a here and there player for the Crows the last couple of years. Like, he didn't really settle into the game this year as a key part of their defence, and a defence which has been decimated, especially for talls. Malera has had a really good season running through that back line, and I think he's the sort of player that can really cut you up with his line cutting and his disposal. So yeah, McAdam and Malera are two in particular that I'll be keeping an eye on for the Crows.
Yeah, good shout out. Good shout out. I mean, we've got the obvious ones. Tex Walker is at 65 goals for the season, so he's absolutely dominating over there. He's just going to run on 1-year contracts for the rest of his life. It seems to work. Rankin comes in for against us, and he's a hard matchup. You know, small forward, very exciting, electric, can do a bit of everything. Effectively took over Eddie's pocket from Eddie in some form of weird apprenticeship where they never played together. That one, and of course Dawson, the man who shall not be named, over there, up there in Brownlow votes, new captain of the team, and doing a brilliant job holding up the midfield and back line and half back over there. So big one for him. Question for yourself, without notice, is Dawson worth a tag?
Tagging's hard. I reckon Dawson, because he's so strong, so he can really damage you inside. Like, he's a bullock. And then on the outside, he's also very damaging, which we saw especially when he played for the Swans, the role he played. He's changed much more to the midfield of the Crows now, especially this year. I was wondering if someone like Callum Mills could be a good matchup on Dawson. Whether he could, because he's got that physical strength, but he can also match him with the run and the outside game, and he can also really, really hurt you with his possessions because he's so clean with the football, Callum Mills. I wonder if he could be someone to not necessarily tag him, but keep him accountable. Whether Mills could be a way to go.
Yeah, that's a good shout. So what about Harry Cunningham has kind of picked up, but that, given just the positioning that he plays a little bit more defensively structured, old Dawson, it doesn't quite make a lot of sense for him, but that would also be a tidy one. But I imagine that Harry probably sits on Rankin, considering the success that he had against Charlie Cameron, against the Lions as well. So that's something that we might shut down. So yeah, it's a good shout. Probably Millsy can sit on him and just try to, basically not give him any time at all to make his superb kicks that seem to be 65 meters and laser pointed towards these other players. So, yeah, not a bad shout. Look, mate, the Crows, they're not messing around. They're a pretty tidy team. I don't know if anyone's been paying attention. Clearances, the Crows are third, Swans are 12th. Hitouts, the Crows are second, the Swans are 17th. Points scored, Crows are first, and contested possessions, Crows are second, and the Swans are 8th. They are sneakily a very statistically good team. They just seems to get themselves in a bit of a shootout and don't necessarily win all of them and can't play too well away from home. But they're no joke. They're a proper team, mate. What have you seen from them?
Yeah, it's interesting you mentioned their forward line because I think the Swans have got the back line to take it to their forwards. I mean, we've got really good defenders that are also very good interceptors in McCartan, and Francis has also been stepping up into that role the last couple of weeks. And then in terms of lockdown players, there's these two underrated underrated defenders that are some of the best in the business. A mate of mine, Grant, actually the coach of our footy team, he sent me a link of a audio clip of SEN Network and Champion Data, the guy from there. He was talking, and he said that Fox is one of the best around. He spoke about his game, especially against the Giants, where he kept Toby Green to his worst rated game of the entire season. These ratings, like player ratings, that that Champion Data give. So he did that job on, and he listed a whole bunch of other players that Fox had totally blanketed. And then he was reading out the top 4 best stoppers in the AFL in terms of keeping their direct opponent below their usual average rating, like player rating per game. And fourth on the list in the entire AFL was Harry Cunningham. He keeps his opponent 40% below their average rating on average every single week. And that's huge. So to have those two really good blanketers against a strong forward line of the Crows, I think can hold us in good stead.
Yeah, right. So you effectively stop the shootout from happening, and then we just need to play our own game at that point. So, look,
And then you got Florent and Blakey just to run it up there, get it out of there. So we've got a really well balanced backline. We've got 2 really good stoppers, 2 really good strong interceptors, and then some runners. So it's a really nicely put together back 6/7.
yeah, who would have thought we'd be in a position where we'd be so excited about our backline, considering how decimated it was early in the season?
Yeah.
But that's great to see, like rebuilding and on the fly. Let's just say that. Well, not really rebuilding on the fly. These are players that were kind of there. We just seem to have found their places a bit better, and a bit of maturity from a couple of them as well. Oh man, look, they're strong in their forward line, as you said, but we've got the back line to be able to bring it up to them. Their defenders are a bit young for the most part, and do happen to get themselves into a bit of a shootout. So if our forwards can bring it to them, cause a bit of ruckus, get some goals rolling in, get some help from the midfield there, keep the ball on the ground, keep it just rancid, it'll be pretty fun, I think. Look, do you want to give a prediction for the game?
I will, because I've done it every other week, but I don't feel as good about this as I've been pretty confident the last couple. This week, I think we could struggle, hey, especially if Amadi doesn't play. That's a big potential out for me. I reckon that we might be needing to go into the final one against Melbourne, needing a win and maybe a few results to fall away. Because Crows at home, they're in good form, they're a strong team, they'll be absolutely roaring, because they know that if they lose this one, then they're probably cooked, like more than likely, even though they played West Coast last week. They really need to win to stay in it, and I reckon we could have a tough day. I reckon Crows by 6 points.
Oh my gosh, this is... Yeah. Oof, mate. All right, I don't know what you've done, but you've really put the hoodoo on, but I apologise to everyone out there listening. If you decide to turn off now, don't do it, because there's a good song coming up, but I can understand why you would want to, but don't do it. Look, Blakey's 100 game. That's awesome. Is he... Why does it feel like he's still 16 years old to me? Is it because he has a mullet?
Yeah, it's the mo and the mullet.
This is brutal. It's so bad, but it's so good. I don't want him to get rid of it. If the day gets rid of it, his mojo goes. So yeah, but 100 games. That's brilliant. McLean's 50th last week. We celebrated Papley's was 150th not long ago. So we've plenty of Pele celebrations from the young crew. Let's see if we can get up. Mate, in the one last things, a couple of things. I did a interview with Daz from the WA Swans supporters group. Fantastic group. Listen to that potty. He's a really lovely guy. Originally from Killarney Vale, which is up your way. Up in Central Coast kid, and actually got to love football via being in the Navy and having a roommate who was a Hawthorn fan down in Victoria. Long story short, he eventually becomes an enormous Swannies fan, seeing that he wanted to support his own state, headed over to WA and is now the president of the club over there. Back in 1996, an interview happened with some guy in the paper about how much he loved the Swans in WA. His passion was too bright to ignore, and it just seemed to have taken off, and enough people got in touch with him, and they created a group, and now they have this group out there, and it's fantastic. There's over 500 members. I've been to one of the events. They are cracking. They're better than anything you'll get for what I've seen so far in Melbourne, or in Sydney for that matter, in terms of a away game, which is effectively what you're watching. Recommend getting involved. If you are in WA, definitely reach out to them. If you're heading to WA for any reason whatsoever, reach out to them. They love outsiders. I've been to one. It's great fun. So listen to that. The other thing is, big news. we teased it earlier. It's nothing to tease. Everyone knows. Paddy McCartan retired after effectively one and a little bit of a season with the Swannies in the AFL system anyway. Mate, what do you want to say about Paddy, other than he is, as far as I'm concerned, a Swan for life?
Oh, just that it can't have been an easy decision to make. So good on him for making such a tough call, and yeah, wish him all the best with whatever he does next. And it was great to see him, especially last year, to see him and his brother playing footy together was great. Because I've got a younger brother who also plays footy, or has been playing footy, and we never got to play that many games together. But the games that we did get together were always really special. The last time was actually in Canada a couple of years ago. That was amazing, and it really is a great thing to get to play on the same field with a family member. And thanks for bringing us all along on the ride.
Yeah, well said, mate. Look, we were really lucky to have him. Lucky for him to get in there and just blown away how great he was just walking in there and just how much of a storyline it was. It was just almost too much to take. And him scoring a goal in the grand final or little things like that. It was just a pretty special time that he had with us. So yeah, I mean, Paddy McCartan lives probably forever as a Swan. As someone mentioned on Facebook, he looks better in red and white than he does red, white, and black. So I think the Swans' heritage will suit him a lot more, especially with the McCartan brother over this side. Mate, you've got one more thing in one last thing.
Yeah, we do. I told everyone last week that Turku, which is our team in the Finnish Aussie rules, was going over to Helsinki to play Game 3 of the 5-match championship series. It was 1-1. We managed to get up 30 points. So now coming into Game 4 back in Turku, we're going to be up 2-1 and hoping to take out the cup in the next couple of weeks. So that made it a great Saturday. I mean, between the Swans getting up and the Matildas and the Turku Dockers, it was a good, and Newcastle, who I support in the Premier League, even had a win. So I had a good day on Saturday. Let's just leave it at that.
Oh, lovely, lovely, lovely.
Yeah.
I don't want to hear what else happened in those celebrations. Let's just assume you had a good time.
It was a good day.
All right, beautiful, mate. Well, that brings us to the end of the episode. So at the end of the episode, after we'll just play Ruth Robinson's Ode to Rampy in song. They will take us out. We'll see you at the Tudor in Redfern for the game on Saturday. Until then, up the Bloods and Khan the Matildas. Let's go, girls. Woo!
He's our captain. He's number 24. What